Following a recent update, it's pretty clear that Louisville is still in serious pursuit of five-star wing Bruce Branch III. Today, I'm going to explain why this is the type of recruitment that the Cardinals should choose to win the bidding war for.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Card Nation, what's going on, everyone? Welcome into this Wednesday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. This is my sixth year covering U of L, fourth year hosting this show. Locked On Louisville, of course, is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network in the world. And this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. We've got a lot of good stuff to discuss on today's show. Son of former NBA standout, now top 2027 recruit, is going to be making an official visit to Louisville this weekend. We'll tell you who that is. We will react to the news that dropped on Wednesday morning that the Louisville-Georgia home and home football series is canceled. How did it get to this point? And what does this mean for the Cardinals' schedule over the next couple of seasons? But we're going to begin today's show by discussing a recruiting update that we got for Bruce Branch III. How does this affect Louisville's chances? What new information did we learn? Is this the type of recruitment that Louisville should be comfortable and willing to win a bidding war for? I believe so. And I'm going to explain why. Bear with me here. But let's rewind just a couple weeks. We had an episode recently that reacted to the news that the number one player in the 2027 men's basketball recruiting class, Bruce Branch III, was reclassifying to the 2026 class. Now, this didn't come as a surprise to many in the recruiting realm, but it became official. And pretty shortly after, Louisville was linked by multiple publications to this recruitment. The connection is pretty clear. Branch is an Adidas athlete, but Louisville's On3 site, paraphrasing here, suggested that the Cardinals would be in pursuit of Bruce Branch III. Now, we mentioned in the episode that we still needed to see how serious Louisville was going to be in this recruitment. And I made it a point to say that if Louisville was wanting to be a serious contender, they had to be comfortable winning a bidding war because A, he's a very good player. B, most of the top recruits have either committed and or signed. And that means that there aren't that many players out there to go after. So the demand might be higher. Well, anyways, a recruiting update dropped recently by 24/7 Sports' Travis Branham. Didn't really reveal too much about the timeline or who are the serious contenders. Basically suggested that this could go well into the spring. He's going to focus on his high school season playing for Prolific Prep, who, if you don't know or if you don't remember, they've relocated from California to now Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and he's going to potentially take some visits early in 2026, and a decision would come after that sometime, you would think, in the spring. But there were some quotes, and I'm not going to spoil the whole article, but he had this to say about Louisville. This is coming directly from Bruce Branch III. Me and Coach Carr played chess the other day, and I beat him. I like Thomas. He's a really cool guy. Like I said, building a relationship is the most important thing. He's a very cool guy, and he's funny. Michael Brown Jr., I love watching that guy. I like Louisville. So pretty clear the interest really isn't like exploratory. It's pretty concrete. And you saw last year the Cardinals give it their best effort for five-star wing Nate Ament. They put together a pretty serious financial package. But at the end of the day, Tennessee came in at the 11th hour and offered him something that he couldn't refuse. But it's pretty clear now, even though Louisville doesn't have a single commit in the 2026 high school class, that they're taking a huge swing for the fence here. Worth mentioning that Coach Carr was in attendance recently when Bruce Branch III played in Owensboro. He was one of the few, if not the only coach that was there, to my knowledge, watching him play. So you have the connection there with Coach Carr, articles linking Louisville to Bruce Branch. And it just seems like you judge the actions more than the words when it comes to who a coaching staff is prioritizing. Who are they going out to visit? Who are they in contact with the most? That shows you who they're prioritizing. And it seems like Bruce Branch III is that player that they are prioritizing, who at the current moment, according to the 24/7 Sports Composite, the 6'7" wing is ranked as the 6th best player in the class, 2nd best small forward. Now, again, the timeline is fluid. Didn't really learn much about when the visits were coming, who were the top contenders in this recruitment, but pretty clear that Louisville's involved. Now, I will say that I believe this is the type of recruitment that the Cardinals should choose to win a bidding war for. Now, I'm all for smart roster construction. Pat Kelsey's done a great job the first 2 years. He's very selective, very meticulous with the way that he builds the roster. You have to be a fit on the court. You have to be a fit off the court. And it has to make sense for this team. We're willing to spend top money, but it's got to make sense. And I'm all for that. I'm all for being very, very selective, because if you're out there just bringing in every top player and spending a ton of money, Louisville probably doesn't have like the top NIL infrastructure in the country. They have a good financial standing, but it's probably not like that top NIL infrastructure. But B, you're seeing top rosters across the country this year not live up to expectations because the fit wasn't there. Just because you spend a lot of money on a roster doesn't mean that team's going to be good. It's a matter of scouting. It's a matter of fitting the system that the players are going into and getting a bunch of guys that buy in to the culture. So I'm going to trust Pat Kelsey and company that if they are prioritizing a player, that they obviously believe that those players are culture fits. When it relates to the player that you're talking about now, Bruce Branch III, being a wing, a top wing that shoots the ball really well, defensive upside is off the charts, 6'7", but has a 7'1" wingspan. His productivity as a first option or a top scoring option and a top creator, I think that they're still growing. He's obviously a top scorer, but what about as a creator? Potential is there. He hasn't really gotten there yet, but sky is the limit here. I think that he's the type of player that if you're going to win a bidding war for, makes a lot of sense. Pat Kelsey has shown you this year, I think, the secret sauce. This is the way that a roster should be compiled. This is the way that a roster should be constructed. You're seeing it. Michael Brown Jr. is doing pretty well. There are some early season shooting struggles, but Louisville's still a good team because they've surrounded him with top veteran talent. Over the past 2 seasons, Louisville has been one of the top teams in bringing in veteran talent. The D1 experience is off the charts. It was top 10 last year. I think it's top 20 this year. So you're showing that, yes, we are willing to bring in the right fit in the high school class, but we're not going to make it to where he has to be a superhero just to lead this team to winning games. We're going to surround him with a good situation to where he can flourish individually, but he's got top players around him that have played in these atmospheres and environments, and they played a good amount of college basketball. So bottom line, I trust Pat Kelsey regardless of what he does. I just think with this type of recruitment, if you go to the portal and you got to get top guards, like think about what you have returning next year. Sananda Frew, Adrian Woolley, some other players in the mix, right? Kenai Roots, the list goes on. But when you think about maybe bringing in a top wing and then going to the portal and going out and getting your guards and maybe some more big men, I think that that could be the right combination because Branch is a really good shooter, solid athlete, 6'7" with a 7'1" wingspan, plays with that physicality, defensive upside, flourishes in transition. Like this feels like a very good fit. I just think that this is the type of recruitment that if Louisville's going to go out and say, yeah, we're going to win a bidding war, but it's got to be for the right player. Bruce Branch III feels like that could be the right type of player because you get that wing that you've been looking for. And Louisville's wing play has been fine, but you haven't had a star on the wing. I think Terrence Edwards was a guard, in my opinion. Kenai Roots, solid recruit. Kason Pryor, solid big man / wing. And then Javon Hadley's been very solid, but you haven't had that star wing player. What happens if you have really good guard play next year and solid front court play, but you insert top wing into the rotation? Going to be pretty interesting. So, of course, we will keep monitoring this recruitment. Does Louisville bring him in for an official visit? I would imagine that they would very much like to do so, but we will keep our ear to the ground and discuss what we need to when that time comes. But we're going to kind of go back and forth. We will have some more recruiting talk at the end of the show, but this might be a little bit more urgent. Some significant football news has finally dropped. The Louisville, Georgia home-and-home series is canceled. Card Nation felt a certain way about this being a quote-unquote mutual decision. I think that there's a reason for that. But how does this affect Louisville's scheduling over the next couple of years? We'll do our best to break that down when we come back. Don't go anywhere. You're tuned into Locked On Louisville, covering your team every day. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. Like the Chargers-Raiders game that I live betted Chargers money line for a couple weeks ago, I followed that same pattern. Chargers went down in the fourth quarter. At that moment, I was like, you know what? Let's throw some money on the Chargers live money line, which was plus odds, and they ended up coming back to win in overtime. FanDuel allowing you to jump into the moment is huge. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com. Place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, so can you. Cardation, thank you all so much for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, Locked On Louisville, free and available on all streaming services, including YouTube and TikTok 5 days a week. Your team every day. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Leave us a comment in the YouTube section below. Both are great ways to help the show continue to grow. It is much appreciated. Also, shout out to all of the people in the Everydayers Club, making us part of your daily routine. If this is your first time tuning in, we're glad that you're here. We hope that you come back to another visit here shortly. But hey, you all are the reason why the Locked On Podcast Network is the #1 sports podcast network in the world, and it is very much appreciated. But let's go ahead and flip this virtual background to Cardinal Stadium rather than the KFC Yum Center, because we got some very important football news to discuss. I don't think that that's the right background. Hold on, let me switch that. Okay, there we go. That's the right background. My apologies. If you're listening to this audibly, you're probably like, what in the world? There's virtual green screen backgrounds that I use for YouTube. But anyway, the Louisville, Georgia series is off. And it seemed like it was just a matter of when, not if, right? When Georgia announced that they had added a 13th game to the schedule recently, you knew that one of them was going to get dropped. Financially speaking, they probably weren't going to drop WKU. Rivalry and historically speaking, they weren't going to drop Georgia Tech, so that left the Louisville game. Now, it was a home-and-home series, and a report dropped on Wednesday morning from Peyton Titus of the Courier-Journal saying that Louisville and Georgia mutually agreed to cancel the series. Paraphrasing there on the title, but they mutually agreed to cancel the series. Now, I'm going to read to you what Josh Hurd had to say. This is a statement from Josh Hurd, and then we'll react to it. We'll talk about the fan base's reaction as well. Recent changes to our home-and-home series with Georgia are another example of the scheduling adjustments that come with today's evolving college football landscape. When Georgia informed us of the need to opt out of the 2026 matchup, several contractual considerations came into play, including cancellation penalties and the structure of the 2027 return game, such as Georgia would have owed Louisville a $1 million penalty for canceling. Additionally, we could have required them to host Louisville to Athens for the 2027 return game unless they paid an additional buyout. Another important consideration, keeping Georgia on the schedule in both 26 and 27 would have forced us to buy out already scheduled non-conference opponents in those years to accommodate the new 9-game ACC slate. That would have added unnecessary costs without improving our overall competitive position. Rather than navigating those complexities, both schools work together to find a solution that provides long-term scheduling flexibility for each program. We will look to pursue a future single-game neutral site matchup in the early 2030s. This approach preserves a high-profile game for our fans, avoids unnecessary financial impact for both universities, and positions us well as the postseason landscape continues to evolve. Our goal will always be to deliver the best possible schedules for Louisville football, one that excites our fans and gives our program every opportunity to compete for championships. We look forward to sharing our updated future schedules soon. End statement. Now, I will say this. It sucks for the season ticket holders losing a home game like Georgia would have been your marquee home game, would have brought a huge crowd to Cardinal Stadium. The revenue from that game would have been massive. I'm not sure who you could add that could replicate that. Now, another reason why Card Nation is a little bit frustrated is that this was mutually agreed upon, meaning that Georgia does not have to pay Louisville for canceling this series. Well, Dalton, I thought that Jeff Brom reiterated that he wanted to play this game. No doubt in my mind that that was the case. Well, why did Louisville concede and not force Georgia to pay the penalty? I'm going to get to that here in just a second. Steve Rummage of ESPN Louisville said on air this morning on the Drew Diener show, there's going to be some news about the replacement game that's going to excite people as much as the Georgia game. Keith Artov, good friend of the show, been on the show multiple times, co-host of From the Pink Seats podcast, tweeted out non-ACC Power 4 teams with an opening in 26. There are 4 of them: LSU, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, USC. Steve quote tweeted that tweet and said, I'd say good chance we see one of these teams. So it seems like Louisville is trying to add a high-profile game to the 2026 schedule. Let's flip back and forth because there's a lot of moving parts here. We'll get to that here in a second, but let's go back to why Louisville wouldn't pay out of this, or why Louisville didn't force Georgia to pay out of this. I don't necessarily know, but I have an assumption that would lead me to believe that this is the reason why. I think it's a leverage play from both parties. The reality is that Georgia had 13 scheduled games in 2026. Louisville had 13 scheduled games in 2027. Their non-conference schedule was South Florida, Richmond, Kentucky, and Georgia. Now, don't forget, 2027, 9-game conference schedule. 2026, most teams in the conference are going to that model, but there's going to be some that have the 8 conference games and 2 Power 4 non-conference games. Was Louisville going to be in that mix, the 8+2 category? It seemed like it was going to be, but who knows? That seems like it's the reason why that there was no payout, in my opinion. It's like, hey, we're going to use this as a leverage play. If you make us pay for 2026, we'll keep you on the schedule in 2027. So it's just going to be a wash in terms of payment. So you're just going to come here. Now, it is what it is at this point. But if Louisville were to keep Georgia on the schedule in 2027, they were going to have to buy a team out, whether it be South Florida, whether it be Richmond. They were going to have to buy a team out. So you weren't really going to see much of that financial gain. So both programs just said, hey, let's let bygones be bygones, and we're just going to, hey, in the series, and let's try to work something out to where we're scheduling a neutral site game coming up. It sucks, don't get me wrong, but I think that that's kind of the rationale here is like Louisville had leverage now, Georgia had leverage next year. Let's just call it what it is and not force either of us to have to take a financial penalty hit at all. So back to the scheduling part of it. There was a part in that statement that said, from Josh Hurd, another important consideration, keeping Georgia on the schedule in 2026 and 27 would have forced us to buy out already scheduled non-conference opponents. We know about the 2027 conflict. What about 2026? I still am kind of concerned about the 2026, or the 2026 like ACC scheduling model. Most teams are going to have a 9-conference schedule, or most teams are going to have a 9-game conference schedule. Others are going to have like the 8 conference games plus 2 Power 4 non-con games? Like, how does that work into deciding who goes to Charlotte next year? Who are you talking about in that regard? So it seems like at the moment, Louisville should be good for 2026. If you add that high caliber game, well, you're good to go. You just replace Georgia with whoever that is. Unless the ACC comes out and says, no, we're going to make Louisville play that 9-game conference schedule in 2026. That means that if you're going to add a high caliber game, you're going to have to subtract another one. That means that in 2026, you're going to have to buy out either the game against Villanova or Charlotte. And there's a possibility that you could lose not one, but 2 home games in 2026. If that game if the game that you're trying to put together, if that's like a neutral site game, because at the moment you're going to like a high caliber team. If it's a neutral site game and you have to take away the Georgia home game, and then the ACC says, oh, hey, by the way, Louisville, you need to cut another game because you're getting a 9-game conference schedule. Well, you're not going to cut the Kentucky game. So it's either going to be Villanova or Charlotte. So that means you would go from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 conference games. I'm sorry, 7 home games. I'm all over the place. 7 home games to 5 home games. 6 at the most, which is what it is. But that's a tough thing to really look into. But those are wrenching the plans. Looking at 2027 real quick, at the moment, all you need to do is add a conference game. You've got your 3 non-con games at South Florida, Kentucky, and Richmond at home. And the ACC is going to be tasked with throwing another conference game onto your plate. And that's going to be okay. Like 2027, not really worried about. 2026, think we got to focus. Is Louisville going to be one of those 9-game conference teams? Didn't seem like it, but are they going to be? We'll see. And if so, who's going to be that 9th conference game that gets added? A lot of things we still have to figure out before we finalize the schedule. And if Steve is right, which usually if he's saying this, he probably is, if we get that news of a replacement game, we'll react to that news as well. But let's put football to the side for the moment again, and we'll go back to men's basketball recruiting, where son of a former NBA standout who is now a top 2027 basketball recruit, he's going to be on campus for an official visit to Louisville this week, and we'll tell you who that is when we come back. You're tuned to the Locked On Louisville, covering your team every day. Let's talk about something most men don't bring up, but I absolutely should. Stress from work, money, life. It doesn't just switch off at night. When it shows up at the worst possible time, Rougiette Ready is designed to help you take back control. Rougiette Ready is a next-generation prescription treatment created to support both the brain and the body so you can feel present, confident, and ready when the moment matters. Rougiette Ready combines 3 clinically proven ingredients in 1 mint that dissolves onto your tongue so it absorbs fast. It's easy to understand why over 150,000 men have already made the switch. Most men are ready in about 15 minutes on average, so you can stay present, confident, and in control when the moment is right. If you've been thinking about taking the next step, now is the time. Head to Rougiette.com/LockedOnCollege. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnCollege to get 15% off your order for a limited time. Rougiette Ready. Feel present, feel confident, feel ready. Obviously, Card Nation, with the basketball recruiting news and the scheduling news, we have postponed the mailbag until later on in the week. So there is a good chance that there's not going to be a Thursday episode. If there's not, there definitely will be a Friday one where we preview the Memphis game. But we will have some mailbag segments, so be sure to get those mailbag questions in the comments below, or hit us up at Deepens_ on X or at LO_Louisville on X as well, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. But let's get back to the men's basketball recruiting realm. A son of a former NBA standout and a top 2027 basketball recruit is making an official visit to Louisville's campus this weekend. There's something that kind of worries me about the timing of this, but we'll tell you who that player is first. That is Reese Alston. Alston is a top guard in the class, number 24. According to the 24/7 Sports Composite, he's a 5-star player, number 5 point guard in the class, number 3 player in the state of Texas, 6'2" point guard from Houston, plays at Second Baptist High School. He is the son of former NBA standout and street ball legend Rafer Alston. Skip to Malou. When I saw the news, I was like, that's Skip to Malou's son? Of course, if you know me, I'm a huge Houston Rockets fan. And I became a fan of the Rockets in the mid-2000s because that's when I first was able to understand basketball. I was born in 1998, so mid-2000s, you could do the math. I was a fan of those early Yao Ming teams, but watching Skip to Malou play with those fancy dribble moves, the street ball play, getting called for the travel because he was dribbling in between his legs, like it was just so fun to watch him play. I still go back and watch some highlights every now and again. But his son, Reese, will be making an official visit to Louisville this weekend. This is his first official visit that he's taken. He's also projected to take another one to Purdue in January. Now, last season, he averaged 21.2 points per game, 4.3 rebounds, 5.2 assists, and 2.4 steals. Plays in the Houston area, which is a pretty good area for talent. So, 6'2", really good guard. No secret that Louisville's going to try to strike while the iron's hot with having Michael Brown Jr., top point guard in the country. He's showing out. So why would you not try to use that momentum to bring in other guards to say, hey, look, see what he's doing? And he's succeeding. Doesn't have to be Superman, but he's got the freedom to succeed. Well, that's definitely the pitch that Louisville's going to be using for not only Reese Alston, but other top guards in the class. Now, what worries me about this timing, you can make as many unlimited unofficial visits as you want. And that's good because although you can make unlimited official visits, it can only be one per school unless a coaching change happens. And I really hope that Louisville doesn't lose Pat Kelsey. So if you make your official visit now, well, then you can't make an official visit to that school again. And you know how I feel about these early recruiting visits. They worry me a little bit because it gives so much time for other schools to say, hey, look, we're going to get involved. We just want to find out what that number is that they're throwing out there. You're offering $1 million. We'll offer $1 million and 1 cent. Of course, joking there. But, yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the timing unless there's two things in play here. Number one, he's going to commit during his junior season pretty quickly after the season. That's the one thing. Or the other would be he could be a reclassification candidate. Now, people have asked about that. Is he going to be a guy that reclassifies? Don't know. Very rarely do you know that a guy is going to reclassify until they do. Like, you're not reclassifying until you are. Bruce Branch III was one of those rare situations where you kind of always felt like he was going to reclassify, and then he did. But others, it just kind of depends. So that's where I wouldn't really feel as worried as if he's going to commit soon or if he's going to reclassify. Because getting the first official visit, it's great, and you can get a lot of momentum. But you saw with Taylor Kinney. He got the official visit in the summer, and then months went by, and then he visited Kansas, and then boom, all of a sudden you're not leading in that recruitment anymore. So I think that you have a better chance to close at the end of the recruitment than you do getting that early official visit. But anyway, Alston resembles his dad in a couple ways. His ball handling is extremely solid. He's productive as a lead guard. The vision is there. He's a capable and willing passer. Doesn't really get sped up or slowed down. Plays at his speed, and it's hard to get him off that wavelength. Does a good job of utilizing change of direction, speeding up and slowing down to his own accord, and solid 3-level score from what I've seen. 3-point shot, can create his own offense. There's an emphasis on getting into the mid-range and scoring in that regard. But he's also really crafty. 6'2", not the tallest guard, but man, he can finish through contact. Some of the ways that he throw shots up around the rim. I'm like, this is Skip to my Lou Jr. But this is a player that I would definitely like to see Louisville add to their class and build around heading into, obviously 2027 class, but it's never too early to talk about that recruiting, because early on in Pat Kelsey's tenure, one of the reasons why people said Louisville wasn't landing guys because they didn't have the relationships. Well, now you really can't use that as an excuse, because you've had ample time to recruit these players and you're getting that first official visit. So we'll see how that visit goes and see if anything comes of it as it relates to a timeline or a commitment date or anything like that. But that's going to wrap up this Wednesday edition of the show. Everyone have a great day. We'll see you back here very soon. Go Cards.